Welcome to the Talking HealthTech podcast. My name is Peter Birch. Today on the show, I'm joined by Rafic Habib from Clinovera, a division of First Line Software. G'day, Rafic. How are you going?
Pete, I'm good. Yourself? It's been a while.
Yes, been a while. Last time we spoke on the podcast, we were in my
In New
garden
Zealand.
studio.
Yeah, gardens.
Down at the Hamilton Gardens in New Zealand when we last caught up. We've had plenty of conversations out and about at events and in the THT Plus community since then, but it has been a little bit since we've done a bit of a deep dive here on the Talking Health Tech podcast. So for those unfamiliar or those that need a refresher, it'd be great actually for you to introduce yourself. Tell us a bit more about Clinovera and First Line Software, and we'll go from there.
Pete, thanks for that intro. So, yeah, I'm the managing director for in APAC, and I actually cover the Middle East as well for Clinovera and First Line. Clinovera is the healthcare division of First Line. First Line is an engineering house, so we provide engineering support for clients across the globe. Got about 500 engineers around the globe. We specialize in a couple of different verticals, not many, but healthcare is one of the beautiful verticals that we focus on. Actually, as a refresher as well, you may recall that First Line helped me build a platform a few years back. So when I was at Clinic Cloud, yeah, First Line I was their client for about 10 years before I joined the cohort. Um, that's quick
Yeah,
rundown, I
and look,
guess.
it's always a good testament that when the customer joins the organization that was supporting them, and yeah, it's been a while since you jumped on board and looking after healthcare in the region and those regions for First Line. So tell me a bit more about the services that you're providing, particularly in that healthcare vertical these days.
Obviously, the biggest buzzword at the moment is the Gen AI topic and agentic AI and some of the work we're doing in that space. So we have a whole team focused around that, working alongside clients and providing engineering support. Gen AI in general is a topic. It is a buzzword, but it's there's a lot of unclarity around where we're going with it, as you know, uh, more so in healthcare probably than any other areas. But in terms of First Line and Clinovera, we provide obviously Gen AI services, Gen AI consulting in the space. We do a lot of work on the interoperability side of things. We have a FHIR practice, so to speak, HL7 V2 and FHIR all the way through. We do application development. We do a lot of work on Microsoft Azure, AWS, GCP, so cloud solutions, architecture, design, architecture, and implementation and support of applications. So we have with 500 engineers on board, we have a lot of engineering muscle, as you can imagine.
Mm. And the clients that you're working with, I'm going to imagine it's a mix of everything, but is it predominantly the app developers looking to really power their solutions, or is it the healthcare systems looking to incorporate some of this capability and connect the dots? Talk me through some of those typical customers in our region and also just more broadly.
Being me with my background, as you know, I've been in the digital health space for around 30 years now. So as you can imagine, my focus is the healthcare vertical. And yes, there is a broad spectrum of clients. We have startups who have ideas and applications that we help them crystallize and bring to life as an application, and all the way through to working with some state governments around interoperability and data management within their environments. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm going to imagine too, one of the common threads or the themes that come through, everyone needs engineering support in some capability, and a lot of people are interested in how they can incorporate generative AI and emerging technologies into their solutions or workflows. One thing that I guess makes that appealing, but also challenging too, is the amount of unstructured data that we have in healthcare. And we talk about unstructured data a bit here on the podcast. But before we get into like some of those solutions, talk to me more about those challenges you're seeing around utilizing data that your clients are seeing, and how you're kind of helping them out with that.
As you know, interoperability has been around as probably it's as old as the digital health itself. And you and I have spoken about it on podcasts many a time. And when you think about it, it's any healthcare system, whether it's a small organization, whether it's a government, there's data flowing around everywhere. In the healthcare space, the F word is still around, right? Facts.
Okay. I've heard a few F words in healthcare in my time, but yes, I've heard facts a lot too.
Yeah. So that's still around. It's still happening. Um, and aside from the facts, there's still a lot of scanned documents. It's a very very normal practice. Every single clinic, you walk in with a piece of paper, gets scanned and filed somewhere. Um, there are clinical notes that are handwritten. There are there's a myriad of data that's flying around that is structured and unstructured. You might have your EMR or EHR or PMS that's got data content, and then you've got 30 scanned documents within that same space, the same file that is difficult to go through. Clinicians don't have time to go through 30 documents unless there's an absolute need. And what if you miss something? So imagine I come to you and said, I've had an MRI of Bib and we should operate.
Mm.
Is it the brain? Is it the spine? Is it the abdomen? An MRI of what? So um, this is one area, I guess, where we are seeing a good marriage of interoperability and what's possible with AI. And interoperability is playing a role and will continue to play a role as healthcare, um, as we broaden our reach in healthcare. So whether we go hospital and home, whether we go um, remote clinics, what do we do with all this data? And for many years, I've discussed this with large operators and clinicians, and the fear is, the data tsunami. What if there's data coming at us from everywhere? What if we miss something? So who's liable? And what if there's a liability question, and then there's a risk question for the patient themselves. So we were thinking about that. We're working with clients around the world in the US and Europe and so on. We're thinking, okay, how do we help? How do we help? And some of the things that we've done around data is how we capture it, whether it's, like I said, FHIR, or whether it's a scanned document. Use AI tools to analyze this data and then make it meaningful to the clinician and give them the ability to interrogate this data, or for a larger clinic or state government, whatever, can we then output this data into a meaningful set of structured data, like FHIR, for example, which is the most common, or whatever they're wanted in, I guess.
Yeah, and the we can regularly bash the facts in healthcare, and the clarity for anyone that's not kind of dealing with structured and unstructured data, or like behind the scenes on a day to day. Am I right? And so in that understanding of, it's fine, we've got the bit of paper here that's got the information from the patient, but maybe they filled out some fields, but the computer or the system's not going to know that, like on a PDF document or a physical bit of paper, that this bit relates to this field. That's why we have clinical coding, or we've got other things to say, well, even though this was in this spot, it uses this code, so then you can tell the computer to connect this bit with that bit, so when it asks for that result, it pulls there. But if it's in a big blobber text, then previously, prior to the whole Gen AI thing, it's kind of like, oh, it's just there, someone's got to sit there and copy paste the thing out and put it into fields, and it's like a super manual process. But in this, what I find is interesting, a lot of people looking at it's like, well, we got all this historical stuff and we got this current process. Can we just get the AI to magically, I'm waving my hands a lot here for those on audio, but get the AI to somehow pull out all that information, even the inference, not even the exact word, but like what it's kind of talking to, and then actually put it into those fields. Have I simplified it too much, or is that the kind of what we're going for here?
That's exactly what we're seeing, and we've developed some tools that were amazing. We've tried it with multiple languages across multiple healthcare providers, and it is incredible at how it can ingest this unstructured data, whether it's a fax, whether it's a scanned document, whether it's handwritten notes, even, and ingest this data and allow you to find something. So I've seen a document where it's a handwritten note with a diagnosis, and then you ask the engine if this person has a condition. It tells you, yeah, they've got this condition from
Mm,
X years ago. So it
mm.
and it's seamless. It's instantaneous as opposed to having many people and precious time, like whether it's a nurse or whether it's a doctor themselves, or it's very precious time that you don't want to waste.
Yeah. Interesting. And then so you've bundled that up into a capability. Is that the unified data platform that we were talking about before? Tell me a bit more about that.
That Yeah, that's a unified data platform. It's our ability to ingest data from almost any source and output it in a structured format, in a structured data format like FHIR, for example, which is the most demanded output at the moment, which is good. We like that. Um, I'd, and, and we can ingest, like I said, from handwritten documents in multiple languages. It's quite interesting because, as you know, I can. Well, you might not know. I can speak Arabic, but yeah, someone ingested a document that was in Arabic, and I asked it a question in English, and it gave me the answer.
Yeah,
So
right.
it's
And the that sounds cool. And I could think of a number of different use cases of it, big and small. Where does that, like, what's the sweet spot for applying this kind of capability? Because I'm going to hazard a guess that, if I was a conservative CISO in a hospital, or I was, the CTO or a CIO thinking, oh, that sounds efficient, but the worst thing we'd want to do is just kind of put our blind faith in the system that's going to say, yeah, trust me, bro, I took this text and I turned it into the right thing. And that's just a thing now in any tech, any industry, and the use of tech around hallucinations and reliability and things like that. So I'm going to hazard a guess and think that you've kind of been grappling with that a little bit too. What's the best use case for some of this technology in its current capability? And then we can talk later about like where it might go to next.
yeah. There are probably a number of challenges. One of them is that um, we're we're not trying to predict outcomes here. We're trying to analyze unstructured data, so it doesn't hallucinate as often as it does when it's trying to predict information. It doesn't mean it gets everything right. So we've for this particular environment, for the unified data platform, for example, we're putting some checks and balances where humans can do some checks and balances around the data and make sure that they're getting what's expected out of the content.
Like it seems more efficient in order for us to do that, because if not for a solution like that, I would have a bunch of humans doing that kind of work, or not doing it all. But if the work really needed to get done, then there'd be humans sitting there and they'd be trained to code. But humans are also prone to errors as well, and you have checks and balances in place to manage that. Once someone has either avoided the need to invest in many more people in order to take on that activity, or they've reduced the human load on some of those skills. What I'm hearing around too is it's not necessarily that those health systems are looking then to just reduce the number of people they have within the healthcare system, because that's not really a main priority right now. It's about then redeploying those individuals or that capability more broadly in the system, and even the focus in order to deliver services in different ways, and perhaps patients that the ways that patients are asking for. Am I in the right like direction here? Because then that, if we're spending less time focusing on some of those menial tasks to structure the unstructured data, then that would probably free us up to focus on more interesting things like how do we do decision support better, or how do we do things like after hours care, or extend out to telehealth services, or home care. Like, is this the kind of wedge in order to then help health systems do more things within their capability? Or like, what other benefits are a system seeing?
Well, the two components. One, you're right. So we're not. this is not an exercise to replace people. It's an exercise to empower people in general, and anyone who's thinking about designing AI tools, like you that's the way you'd want to approach it. You want to approach it in a way of how do I optimize and support my people and optimize their workflows. Um, Healthcare has still suffers, and since I began 30 years ago till now, we still suffer a shortage of resources, shortage of nurses, shortage of allied health, GP, non-GP specialists. So there's still a huge shortages across the globe. So there's no real threat to people in that space right now. But how do we better enable these people? How do we enable them to provide better care, to reduce risks, um, and some of these tasks, like if you think about unstructured data and making meaningful use out of it, um, this is a requirement that is often unaddressed. So
Mm.
right, so it's we want it, we need it, we need a wholesome set of data about a particular patient or a particular cohort of patients in order to achieve an outcome. But that data is not always available. Then we think, okay, if I want to create a data lake on like on, of sorts, so I can create and then build my FHIR backbone, um, API based FHIR backbone, then I need all the data to make that successful. Then hang on, I've got all this data sitting in PDFs and JPEGs and handwritten documents. Then there you go. That's a blocker right there. So how do I go from here to achieving what I want to achieve? And that's how, like, FHIR is about enabling that interoperability, about moving away from point to point integrations and moving towards this beautiful new world of anybody can connect and see a wholesome set of data. Then where is that wholesome set of data? It's stuck somewhere.
Mm. Yeah.
So so it's not necessarily trying to remove or replace people here, but it's trying to enable everybody to achieve a better outcome.
Yeah, I don't think you'll come across a health system that's looking at, we've got a glut of healthcare providers here, or we've got, it's rare that you'll find doctors kind of sitting around looking for, or nurses or anyone looking for things to do necessarily
Things
within a
to do,
health
yeah.
system. So, yeah, exactly. So,
I can give them
um,
PDFs to review
yeah, yeah, that's right. If you need
if they're
them, I'm
bored.
sure we can
If they're
find.
bored, yeah,
We could start a bit of a like a crowdsource of like if
yeah,
I
yeah.
don't think we'll
Crowdsource,
find
yeah,
anyone
yeah.
that's
No, I don't think so.
a fire enabled one, of course. But actually, well, and building on the I guess any of those technology capabilities we talked about before around the reliance on AI and the current state of it, and around potential hallucinations and all of that. I guess more broadly too, given that you're dealing with a lot of data across different regions and the back and forth of and the transmission of that information, I'm going to guess there's a lot for organizations to think around things like security and compliance, and then what frameworks do you develop, because if you're going to build up this as a capability at scale, you don't just kind of do it. If you want to do it right, you got to kind of build it into the way we do things around here, which then means, well, how do we govern it, how do we structure it, like all that. Like, so I'm going to imagine that's part of your conversations you're having with people as well.
Absolutely right. So security and how we handle that data is a big part of it. So we've had to think of ways to, ML on site versus ML that's cloud hosted, training. How do we manage all that aspect of it? So when building this particular tool, for example, we built it in a way where it's quite customizable. So if a local health network would come to us and say, hey, we love it, but we want it on site, then we can do that for them, so that their data doesn't leave their jurisdiction, so to speak. So yes, these are ongoing considerations on, how do we provide the tools for organizations to do what they need to do, but remain compliant.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Lastly, Rafic, I imagine there's health systems, app providers, or and different players in the health system that could be at varying levels of maturity or project completeness, and at different stages. And it's always hard, I find, thinking about, well, when do we engage, the professionals or the people that do this all the time? or the data geeks like you guys. So at what at what point are you finding is the best time to kind of engage and talk through some of these challenges, and what would that kind of process look like for someone?
So, early conversations. We're up into early conversations. We're quite patient in terms of how we approach projects and how we work with clients. So we've done anything from a conversation to proof of concept to a complete output of a project. So understanding, for us to provide the right output, we need to understand the problem that you're trying to fix.
Yep.
And I've always adopted that. When I was on the other side of the fence, I've always adopted that. I've always adopted the approach of bring my engineers on the journey, engage them, tell them the story, tell them what problem I'm trying to solve, and that way you kind of bought yourself a few extra minds to help you solve these problems, rather than trying to think of everything yourself, which is quite challenging. Yeah.
100%. Well, I do, you know, recommend anyone to get in touch with Rafic. I put you in the bucket of one of those super connectors, Rafic. Of if I don't know someone, chances are you probably do, or you know someone that will. So that should blow up your LinkedIn DMs for a little bit, perhaps after this episode. But I know you're always good for it. So
Thank you.
we'll put the details for Clinovera and First Line in the show notes of this episode for people to check out. And if they've got any questions, they can be in touch. So, Rafic, I really appreciate you making the time.
Likewise, Pete. Good to see you as usual, and I'll probably see you next week. Hick.
See you somewhere. Yeah, that's it.
See you somewhere.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Talking Health Tech. Make sure you like and subscribe, and share this episode with someone who might find it valuable. For more information and resources about healthcare innovation, visit talkinghealthtech.com.